Going on, guys? Today I want to talk about Jujutsu Kaisen. Jujutsu Kaisen is one of my favorite mangas or Japanese comic series that I've been reading, and it follows the main protagonist, Yuji Itadori. As he's tossed into a world of cursed users, demons, and cursed abilities, it's incredibly written and I definitely recommend it. And as I was reading one of the more recent chapters, a concept came to mind. The concept of the older brother's responsibility. I arrived at this conceptual thought from the encounter of one of the characters, Chosu, with another newly introduced antagonist, Naoya. Naoya comes from the prestigious Zenin clan. The Zenin clan is one of the familial pillars upholding the Jujutsu Kaisen world. And in his family, one's cursed abilities determines one's status. Cursed abilities are basically the superpowers within the world of Jujutsu Kaisen. And coming from this philosophical viewpoint, he and Chosu, as they battle with one another, begin to discuss their opposing philosophies. Naoya carries the viewpoint of his brothers that they should die because they're weak, whereas Chosu carries the exact opposite viewpoint. Chosu's connection to his brothers is so deep and profound that when one of them dies, he receives a vision, and this vision, as shown throughout the story, often leads him to tears as it should. He cares very deeply about his brothers. And Chosu presents a counter-argument to Naoya, noting that maybe Naoya is where he is because his brothers were weak. He goes on to note that he's made many mistakes, and what he strives to do is use those mistakes to enhance his brother's journey so that they don't have to make the same mistakes. He views his brothers, his younger brothers, as greater than him, and he's trying his very best with everything he has to use those mistakes so that they can achieve their potential. And the idea of the older brother's responsibility came to me from this chapter because as a black man, I began to think about how I, in times past, and how I've seen many of us, many black men, and how we interact with one another. And our interaction with one another as black men can fall within two categories equated with either Naoya or Chosu. Naoya's philosophy is that his brothers are worth nothing, and many times, by default, black men carry this view of ourselves and each other, whereas we see each other as worthless. We look at each other as our greatest competition. So if we see ourselves as worthless, of course we would see somebody who is another representation of who we are as black men in the same light. If not worse, our brother can often become the scapegoat for our frustration, having to live in a society that targets and destroys black men on the daily. But some brothers, through the enlightenment of history, through the enlightenment of other examples, have been able to achieve an enlightened stance equated with Chosu's philosophy, where we see our brothers as precious. We see them as diamonds in the rough. We see them as grand potential waiting to erupt. This enlightened viewpoint comes from maturity, paying attention to the world around us, studying, and more importantly, developing a healthy self-esteem, which is almost impossible to do without the enlightenment of history as a black man. But all of us, at some point, need to adopt Chosu's philosophy, which I call the older brother's responsibility. Every black man that is born, or every black boy that is born, automatically receives this responsibility, because there is always a younger black boy to come after us. And through this responsibility, we're tasked with being an example for our youngers so that they can avoid the missteps that we make. When we opt to be a definitive example for our brothers, that diamond in the rough status can lead our brothers to becoming a full-fledged diamond. That potential waiting to erupt can become actualized potential. But the only way that we can do this is through the support of each other, because the unfortunate circumstance that black men and boys are born into is that nobody is coming to our rescue. Nobody is willing to even discuss the facts pertaining to our history and current status as subjects of oppression, as Professor Tommy J. Curry argues in The Man Not. And while there is no alternative hero coming, there is no external force coming, we do still have each other. By adopting the older brother's responsibility, we're able to help ourselves. We're able to become not just the hero for our youngers, but the hero for ourselves, because we begin to shift our viewpoint of who we are, what we represent, and more importantly, what we are meant to do as Black men as a whole. The call is for us to work together, to build. And we can't do this with Naoya's philosophy, where we view each other as enemies. We view each other as something to be taken down. We are our brother's keeper. And it's our responsibility to ensure that we are leading a life of example for younger Black men and boys that are upcoming, so that they don't have to face the same traumas and mishaps that we did as the older ones going forward. They're our responsibility. We're all each other's responsibility. Yes, we make mistakes. Yes, we've failed. And some of us may even be on the verge of giving up. But possibly one of the best ways to pick yourself up and keep going is knowing that there is a meaning to your failings. Knowing that your failings aren't just for you to learn from, they're for others to learn from as well. And by thinking about the younger Black boys and men that are coming behind you, it could be a possible route to gaining the strength to keep going, to keep pushing forward, because you know that you have a responsibility that you have to carry as an older brother. Black men, adopt the older brother's responsibility as your default philosophy, so that we can begin to work together, so that we can begin to change the circumstances within our community together as brothers.